Hello everyone and welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi. Today we're doing Tractate Menachot Daf Daf 93a. The Gemara asks, but if the repeat term is offering is not needed to counter a fortiori inferences, why do I need these three verses? The Gemara explains, the one instance of his offering teaches that one places hands only on one's own offering, but not on an offering of another person. Another instance of his offering teaches that one places his hands only on one's own offering, but not on an offering of a Gentile. So as a footnote, below common boy, the burnt offerings of Gentiles do not require placing of hands, as this mitzvah applies only to Jews, and that's from the Rambam Sefer Avod Hilchot Maser Korbanot. The halacha that a Gentile who brings an offering does not place his own hand on the head of the animal derived from the verses, speak to the children of Israel, and he shall place his hand in Leviticus 1, 2 to 4, which indicates that only Jews place their hands, not Gentiles. A derivation from his offering teaches that even the priest who sacrifices the offering of the Gentile does not place his hands on the Gentile's behalf. This unlike the halacha with regard to the libation of a Gentile's offering, as although the Gentile himself does not bring libations, his offering is treated like that of a Jew, in that his libation are purchased with communal funds. See Turma 2b, Tosfot on 62b and Elchin 2b. The third instance of his offering serves to include all the owners of a jointly owned offering in the requirement of placing hands, i.e. they are all required to place their hands on the offering. The Mishnah states, if the owner of the offering died, and then the heir is regarded as the offering's owner, therefore he places his hands. Hayoresh Someich. Some of the later commentaries explain that because the heir achieves a measure of atonement through his father's offering, he is considered his owner and therefore can place his hands upon it. There is a discussion in Tractate Tavachim 5b to 6a concerning the atonement of the heir through the offering he inherited. Furthermore, it can be claimed that since an heir partakes of the offering, he should place his hands upon it. It is for that reason that an heir brings the libation for the offering, even if he did not inherit the libation Menachot Chinuch on the offering, and bring the accompanying libations, and he can substitute a non-sacred animal for it. Although it is prohibited to perform an act of substitution, if the owner of an offering does this, his attempt is successful to the extent that the non-sacred animal is thereby consecrated, even though the original offering also remains sacred. Rabbi Hanania taught in a bright in the presence of Rava. An heir does not place hands on an offering he inherited, and an heir cannot substitute a non-sacred animal for an offering he inherited. Rava asked, but didn't we learn in the Mishnah, the heir places his hands on this offering and brings the accompanying libations, and he can substitute a non-sacred animal for it, and thereby consecrate a non-sacred animal. Rav Hanania said to Rava, should I reverse the conversion of the Brisa to have it be in accordance with the Mishnah? And Rava said to him, no. As whose opinion expressed in the Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, as it's taught in the Brisa, an heir places his hands, an heir can affect substitution. Rabbi Yehuda says, an heir does not place hands, and an heir cannot affect substitution. The Gemara clarifies what is reading Rabbi Yehuda. He expounds the term his offering as teaching that one places hands only on one's own offering, but not on one's father's offering that one inherited. And furthermore, Rabbi Yehuda derives a halacha concerning who can substitute a non-sacred animal for an offering, which is at the initial stage of consecration, from the halacha concerning who performs the rite of placing hands on the offering, which is in the final state of consecration. Just as with regard to the final state of consecration, an heir does not place his hands, so too with regard to the initial state of consecration, the heir cannot affect substitution. And as for the rabbis, from where they derive their opinion, the verse states, if he shall substitute, Hamei Yamir, animal for animal, Leviticus 27:10, with a double form of Hamei Yamir, serving to include the heir as one capable of effecting substitution. And furthermore, they derive the halacha concerning one who performs the rite of placing hands, which is the final state of consecration, from the halacha concerning who can effect substitution, which is the initial state of consecration. Just as with regard to the initial state of consecration, an heir can effect substitution, so too with regard to the final state of consecration, an heir places his hands. Moras. Now to the rabbis, what do they do with this term, his offering? The Gemara explains how the rabbis expound each mention of the term. One instance of his offering teaches that one places hands only on one's own offering, but not on an offering of a Gentile. Another instance of his offering teaches that one places hands only on one's own offering, but not on an offering of another person. The third instance of his offering says to include all the owners of a jointly owned offering in the requirement of placing hands. They are all required to place their hand on the offering. The Gemara clarifies, and Rabbi Yehuda does not hold that one of the mentions serves to include all the owners of a jointly owned offering in the requirement of placing hands. So what's the footnote? Some commentators claim that according to Rabbi Yehuda, there is no requirement of placing hands at all in the case of a jointly owned offering, and that's Rashi on 2a. Rashi here, and in the parallel to the discussion on Alchin 2a, explains that one of the owners places his hands on behalf of them all. It has been noted that according to some version of the text, the Gemara on Alchin adds a reason for the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that does not appear here, as his offering is not specific to him. According to the reason, it follows that no placing of hands is performed at all on this offering. But according to the Gemara here, which does not mention this reason, may maintain that the fact that offering is brought by a group of people does not negate the need for placing of hands. All it means is that this mitzvah is performed by one of them on behalf of them all. See the commentaries know that there are two aspects to the obligation of placing hands: a mitzvah that applies to the offering, and a mitzvah that applies to the owner. In this case, it is possible that although the mitzvah does not apply to the owners, it does apply to the offering itself, and therefore one of the owners places his hand on behalf of them all, and that's in the Knesset have shown him. With regard to two people who brought a joint peace offering, they both placed their hand on the head of the animal. That's in the Ram Sefer Avod Hilchot Matzah component 9:15. So he's able to expound it to exclude an heir from the requirement. Certainly, if he holds that one of the mentions serves to include owners of a jointly owned offering, then he must derive that one does not place hands on the offering of a Gentile or of another person from the same mention in the verse, which leaves him two more mentions in the verses. One, he expands to teach that on his offering he places hands, but not on his father's offering that he inherited. And the other mention remains to include all the owners of a jointly owned offering in the requirement of placing hands. The Gemara asks, and as for Rabbi Yehuda, what does he do with the use of the double formed in this verse if he shall substitute Hamayame? The Gemara answers, he requires it to include a woman, the Rabbas Esa Isha. If the owner of an offering substitutes another animal in place of the offering, the substitution is effective whether the owner is a man or a woman. Sefer Kabbalah Hechatum is 1:7. Among those who can effect substitution, as is taught in the Braita. Since the entire matter of substitution stated in the Torah only in the masculine form, was the reason that we ultimately come to include a woman. The verse states, if he shall substitute, Hamayame is used in a doubled verb form. And as for the rabbis, they derive that a woman can effect substitution from the term and if, in Leviticus 27:10, in the phrase, and if he shall substitute, and Rabbi Yehuda does not expand the term and if at all. Mishnah, Hakol Somchin Chutz Mecheresh Shote V'Katan V'Suma V'Goy V'Ha'eved V'Hashaliach Ha'isha. Everyone who brings an animal offering places hands upon his head. Hakol Somchin V'Chulu. All must place their hands on their offerings except for a deaf mute, an imbecile, a minor, a Canaanite slave, a woman, a blind person, a Gentile, and an agent who brings an offering on behalf of another. That's in the Ram Sefer Avod Hilchot Matzah component 3:8. Upon his head, except for a deaf mute, an imbecile, a minor, Charesh, a deaf mute, Shoter, an imbecile, Vakatan, a minor. The members of the three categories are frequently grouped together due to their limited intellectual capacity and their inability to act responsibly. They are not obligated to perform mitzvot, nor are they held responsible for any damage they may cause. They also lack the legal capacity to act as agents. Although all three are mentioned above, there are nevertheless many differences between the halacha governing each of them. A blind person, a Gentile, Canaanite slave, the agent of the owner of the offering who brings the offering on the owner's behalf, and a woman. And the requirement of placing hands is not a non-essential mitzvah. Shemicha sha'arei mitzvah. The requirement to place one's hands on the head of an animal is a non-essential mitzvah. Therefore, even if the owner did not place his hands, he has achieved atonement. Nevertheless, he performed the mitzvah improperly, and that's the Ram Sefer 3:12. Therefore, failure to place hands does not prevent the owner from achieving atonement. The rite of placing hands is performed by leaning on the head of the offering with two hands. One who places his hand on the offering must place both hands on top of the animal's head and lean on the animal with all their strength in accordance with the verse on the head of the burnt offering, Leviticus 1:4. He should not place his hand on the animal's neck or the sides of his head. As in the Ram Sefer 3:13, and in the same location in the temple that one places hands, one slaughters the animal. And immediately following the rite of placing hands, the slaughter is performed. One slaughters an offering in the place where the placing of animals was performed. The slaughter must immediately follow the placing of hands. If one slaughters the animal elsewhere in the temple courtyard or delayed its slaughter, it is nevertheless valid. From the Sefer Avod, the Hilchot Mazak Rabbanan 3:12, gets the Mishnah there. The Gemara explains why certain types of people do not place hands on an offering. Granted, a deaf mute, an imbecile, and a minor do not place their hands on the offering, as they are not mentally competent. The exclusion of a Gentile is also understandable, as the verses concerning placing hands are introduced with "Speak the children of Israel and say to them," Leviticus 1:2, which indicates that the children of Israel place hands upon their offerings, but Gentiles do not place their hands upon their offerings. But with regard to a blind person, what is the reason that he does not place his hands on his offering? Rav Chisda and Rav Yitzchak Bar Dimi disagree as to the sort of the exclusion of a blind person. One said that it is derived from an analogy between the mention of placing hands in the passage detailing the general requirement to do so, and the mention of placing hands stated with regard to the bull offering brought from the community-wide violation perpetrated due to an erroneous ruling of the Sanhedrin, which is performed by the elders of the congregation, i.e. the judge of the Sanhedrin. Just as judges may not be blind, see Sanhedrin 34b, so too the rite of placing hands is not performed by a blind person. And the other one said that it is derived from a verbal analogy between the mention of placing hands in the passage detailing the general requirement to do so, and the mention of placing hands stated with regard to the burnt offerings of appearance. What does that mean? Oris Re'iyah. This is the burnt offering brought to the temple by celebrants on the three pilgrimage festivals. The Torah prohibits one from coming to the temple on these festivals without bringing an offering. Deuteronomy 16:16, brought by an individual on the pilgrimage festivals. Just as a blind person is exempt from making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem and bringing the offering to Chagiga 2a, so too he is excluded from the requirement to place hands. Then Gemara asks, and according to the one who said that the exclusion of a blind person derived from the burnt offering of appearance, what is the reason that he does not derive this from the placing of hands performed by the elders of the congregation? That's the end of the Omid. Thank you for listening and wish you a very good day. All the best. Bye.